the QB.
Welcome to Shelterhouse Shares on MCTV, our monthly program where we talk to you about Shelterhouse and all the services that we provide and the things that we do and some of the dynamics of domestic and sexual violence in our community. Today, we are going to talk about teen dating violence because February is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. I'm Janine Ouderkirk, and I'm the Executive Director at Shelterhouse, and I have with me today Audra Johnson and Nikita Murray. Audra, can you introduce yourself a little bit, please?
Hi, I'm Audra Johnson, and I'm the Sexual Assault Program Coordinator at Shelterhouse.
And I'm Nikita Murray. I oversee clinical services or the clinical service staff at Shelterhouse, and I also get the opportunity to work with our teen advisory group.
Both specializing, do a lot of services in their areas of expertise and work with teens and children, and you're going to hear a lot of good stuff from them today. So we're going to talk a little bit about Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, and that's February. So why should we have a discussion that focuses on teenagers?
Well, the first reason is that teenagers they're at a very interesting time in their lives. They're at a point where they're just starting to look at relationships and put what they've learned in the past and through their own experiences into practice. And again, like I said, it's kind of the first time they're going to get to try that out a little bit. And also, as far as social development goes, they are focusing on relationships at that point in their lives, whether it be friends or romantic relationships. That is a focus of teenagers. I think we can all agree on that. The other reason is because it is a big issue.
Here?
Oh, yes. In 2004, there was a study done all about teen dating violence. And what they found was that 81% of parents, 81%, believe dating violence isn't an issue or don't know if it's an issue. So that's 81. Keep that in mind. And additionally, we know that in a 2008 study, 1 in 3 adolescents in the United States will experience verbal or physical abuse.
That's quite a contradiction. 81% of adults don't think it's a problem, yet 1 in 3 teens do experience it. So why do you think that is? Why aren't the adults aware that it's an issue?
Go for it.
In a very basic sense, it comes down to how adults tend to view young people and their problems, and view young people problems as less significant because they're not paying bills, they're not having to juggle marital relationships or adult relationships, they don't have to work, and all those things that we as adults consider important aspects of our lives. And so for whatever young people have going on, we just kind of poo-poo that a little bit. And if you were to ask a young person about it, that would be one of the main things that they would tell you, that either their parents or other adults in their lives don't take their problems seriously.
And I don't even know if this is a phrase anymore, but I remember when I was a young teenager and talking the old phrase, oh, it's just puppy love, you'll get over it. And so the idea that that type of teenage love isn't real love. And so it may not be the lifetime love or long-lasting love, but it is real, and the feelings are real, and so we as adults tend to minimize that.
Sure.
And that makes it very hard for teenagers to come forward. I think our standard go-to response is, if you're in trouble, tell a trusted adult. But what happens is you tell a trusted adult, they minimize your experience. Are you really going to tell them again?
Right.
Probably not.
And probably most adults don't realize the danger that it can be posed by the dating violence that their youth are experiencing.
Absolutely, and when you bring together our teen advisory group, even within that group of young people, they can talk about what they're seeing amongst their peers and their younger siblings in terms of unhealthy patterns that are coming up and how they want to do more to make the connection between what Audra said, knowing who you can talk to, what you can talk about, and not giving up, because there are people out there who genuinely care and consider your issues to be real issues.
So to help both the adults who are watching and if there's any teens watching, what is dating violence?
Dating violence, and yes, I've got the actual definition. Dating violence is a pattern of abusive behaviors used to exert power and control over a dating partner. So there's a couple things to note. Number one, it's a pattern. It's not something that happens once and it's over. Once these patterns start, they tend to escalate over time, and they don't just stop on their own. So if you are seeing these concerning behaviors in your kids' relationships or their friends' relationships, just know that it is a serious issue. So that's the first thing, is that it's a pattern. The second thing is that it's all about power and control, meaning one person in the relationship trying to make all the decisions and trying to have power and control over the other person.
Can you give some examples of that?
Sure. When we have the chance to go out into the schools, some of the things we always want to emphasize is that the violence doesn't necessarily have to be a physical or evidence of a physical attack.
Doesn't have to be bruises.
It doesn't have to be bruises. But if you are intimidated to the degree that you feel uncomfortable or you feel badly about yourself, you feel forced to do something that you wouldn't normally do or you have questions about, all of those are parts of an abusive relationship. And how it connects to violence and the way that we think about it is that it starts out with something that we would view as simple, an argument, a nudge, a pinch. You know, we view those things as simple, but we also know from the research that those things are just precursors to what could escalate.
So it might start out as you want to go to the movies and you always have to go see that person's
Yes.
type of movie.
Yes.
And then it might escalate from there.
If I tell young people, if they're blowing up your cell phone, texting you 24/7, wanting to know where you are at every moment, calling you at every moment, yes, as females, sometimes we can find that flattering, and sometimes males do too, but that is not healthy.
Yeah.
That is not just a little jealousy because they're really interested in you. That's a control piece and trying to monitor what you're doing. And we know that our young people are so connected to their technology that that's a really important piece.
Sure.
If they ask you to send pictures.
And to get to the sexual assault part of it, it might be, well, if you really love me, you'll,
Yes.
whatever
Yes.
it might be that they're asking. So all of that is domestic or sexual violence. And so it's intimate partners forcing, controlling another person. So, okay, let's look at the flip side. Look at the other side. What is a healthy relationship then?
On a very basic level, a healthy relationship is something that's built on equality and respect. That's a very, very basic definition, is that healthy relationships is all about equality, both partners in the relationship being truly partners, not one person having control over the other person. And when looking at this, it's very interesting when talking with the teens to find out what their definition of respect is, because it varies so much just from person to person and what respect actually looks like.
And there's a difference between the feeling respect, I can feel respect for someone, and behaving respectfully. So for them, that differentiation probably isn't always clear.
Not at all.
Okay.
And that's part of the work too. We spend a considerable amount of time when we're talking about healthy relationships, emphasizing those characteristics that you yourself might have too. So it's not just what to look out for in someone else, but what to look out for in yourself. If you really want a relationship that's equal and balanced and mutually fulfilling, you're both doing the right things for each other. Even if that means walking away, you're okay with breaking up with each other and walking away because the relationship isn't going where you both want it to go. And it's when it becomes unhealthy is when the other person says, well, if you leave me, I don't know what I'll do.
Yeah,
Or I might hurt myself.
sure. That can be pretty scary. And,
Right.
and teens without the emotional maturity, and even some adults, don't know how to handle that.
Right.
So how are abusive relationships with teenagers different than abusive relationships with adults?
To start off with, there's a lot more research about adult relationships than there are teenage relationships. I think us as a society, we're starting to realize that yes, teenagers do actually go through things when they're in relationships. We aren't minimizing it, at least quite as much anymore. And so we're just starting to focus on this field. But there's a lot of basic differences. I mean, one easy definition or example deals with finances. As adults, when you're in a serious relationship, usually you get to that point where you combine resources, you get your joint bank account, you may even buy big purchases together, like a car or a house. Teenagers don't have to worry about that. So they have a lot more financial freedom. The other big piece that we see is the role of peers. Teenagers, their peers really matter to them. Not that they don't as adults, it's just a little bit of a different impact on their lives. It truly is important to them. And we see that every day. I mean, you go into the high schools and there's all groups of friends all over the place. So we do know that peers are a lot more influential. And we also know that half of all dating violence incidents happen when there's a third party around. So what that means is for teenagers, their peers can have a big influence on what happens.
It's ringing a bell for me with the bullying stuff. And Nikita, I know you've done a lot of work with bullying, and bystanders have the biggest ability to stop it, to do some of those things. Is there any similarities in what you've seen with bullying and the relationship that goes between two people with the third person watching? Is there some dynamics there that we can, because a lot of people probably have heard more about bullying and what they can do versus the dating violence, and is there some of those skills that can be transferred from bullying prevention over to this?
Sure, absolutely. And we talk about it as an extension of bullying, or in the same conversation as bullying.
Okay.
So we don't look at dating violence as a separate experience than bullying, because it pretty much is. Because bullying is about power and control as well, and seeking to attain a certain either internal gratification or something externally from peers and people who are around. So what we try to do is emphasize what it looks like when you see it happening, and how, even if you're the third person, so if you're the best friend or the bestie or the BFF or you know, the ride and die person, whatever word you're using, if you're that person and you're in relationship with someone who's being hurt, you still have the same obligation to say something, to tell a safe adult, to talk to a school counselor or a school principal if it's happening in the school setting. If you're one of those young people who's fortunate enough to truly have an open and great relationship with your parents, talk to your parents. They would love to be able to help point you in the right direction. Your youth minister or community advisor, if you're involved in some of those types of things. So there's always somebody else that you can tell without necessarily breaking the confidentiality of your friendship, but still getting help for your friendship.
It has to be really tricky for them to navigate through all of that. So why are we focusing on teenagers this month?
Well, February is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, so that's a huge reason. We really are focusing this year on raising the awareness of how big an issue this is and how important it is that we focus on it as a community.
And talking more about it in our community.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So how long has February been Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month?
It's relatively new. It began forming in 2006, and what happened was Congress decided that the first week in February was going to be Teen Dating Violence Awareness Week. And then a couple years pass, and it's becoming more and more prevalent, meaning we're spending more and more attention on it. And so then in 2010, they decided to dedicate an entire month to teen dating violence awareness.
So this is started by the U.S. Congress?
Yes.
Okay. So how can we make a difference in our community?
As adults, the biggest thing that we can do is to be a healthy influence. Often with teenagers, they may not have a good idea of what a healthy relationship is. Meaning if you come from an environment where you don't see any healthy relationships, and there aren't too many on TV, I've been searching for them, how are you supposed to know what's healthy and what's unhealthy? And that's kind of where we see some of these patterns starting, is you can see it generationally. So you can be a healthy influence, show these kids what a healthy relationship actually is, and also be that safe person that they can talk to.
So when you are interacting with teens, maybe at church, different clubs that you might be the adult mentor for, those kinds of things, talking about relationships, is that